Welcome back to Season 4 of the Sober Motivation Podcast. Join me, Brad, each week as my guests and I share incredible and powerful sobriety stories. We're here to show sobriety is possible, one story at a time. Let's go. In this episode, we have Simon, who shares his harrowing yet inspiring journey from teenage grief to getting sober and completing Ironmans. Simon opens up about his struggles with alcohol and painkillers, the wake-up calls that spurred his transformation, and the profound emotional rewards of his sobriety journey. Simon's story underscores the transformative power of small, consistent actions and the support from loved ones in overcoming life's biggest challenges. And this is Simon's story on the Sober Motivation Podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Sober Motivation Podcast. We've got Simon with us today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. So what was it like for you growing up?
Yeah, so I'm from England. I've got my two parents. My dad was English and my mum was French. And, you know, I had a really beautiful childhood. I was really lucky. My great parents lived in a nice place in England, just outside of London. And things were going pretty smoothly. I wasn't great at school. I wasn't a great achiever. And I also struggled from quite an early age with my weight. You know, I loved my food with a French mother, and, you know, she was a great cook. I probably, ate a little bit too much. I think that's fair to say, and took a bit of stick about that as a child. And really, I guess my journey with alcohol started. It started when I was 15 years old. My mum sadly passed away from cancer. At first, she had breast cancer over a couple of years, and then we thought, that had been solved, but sadly they then discovered it had gone to her brain, and that part went quite quickly, and we lost her. And that was really that exact day, I ended up going to see a friend in the afternoon after it had happened, and we cracked open in England we call it hooch. It's like a lemonade, alcoholic lemonade. I don't know what you call it out there, and had a couple of those, and I suppose instantly got this feeling of numbness, like, oh, okay, I can handle this a bit. And that was really where my journey started with it.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. Did you attend any type of boarding school or anything? I've seen that, like, as some people's stories from the UK, but no.
Yeah, no, I didn't attend boarding school, just a kind of normal UK school, if you like. But no, I didn't go to boarding school. So that meant I had a really good relationship with my parents as well, that I saw them most days. And
Yeah. And as that kind of, happens at 15, and I think whether you realized it at the time or not, but that you were looking for an escape from everything you were feeling, like you found it in alcohol.
Yeah. And it really kind of, I suppose, took off from there and never really slowed down. And, at 15, at that type of age anyway, you're starting to get involved in parties and all of that. But and also the food element for me, that, my dad worked away a lot. So I was kind of left to fend for myself. And I had an older brother, but he'd gone on to university. So, I would regularly find myself at home for maybe a week on my own, where I was cooking my own food, or more taking it out of the box and sticking it in the oven. And, I had access to alcohol. There was alcohol in the house. And so, but I suppose I quickly noticed maybe I was drinking differently to other people. And I think, kind of early on in my drinking days, that it was definitely my way of dealing with that pain from my mum's death. And I would drink right to the end, if that makes sense, of an evening, right to the limit, until I felt sick or until I passed out, and I never took a pause. I just carried on from the age of 15 right through to the age of 38 and 39. And I never really put two and two together. I struggled with my weight. I got right up to 22, 23 stone but I always blamed it on the food. I always, I always blame that on my relationship with food. And I never really, because I think alcohol's so ingrained, the way it's advertised, the messaging from the media, that everyone that's drinking alcohol on the telly is so slim and sexy, right? So it can't be the alcohol.
Yeah.
And so I never put two and two together that they were causing me a problem.
Yeah, that it was the food and to eating a lot after drinking. I mean, we used to do that a lot too. Eat a lot of junk food, go for takeout or whatever it was. Just for the math, 23 stone, what's the range in pounds?
Oh, yeah. So in pounds, that's nearly 320, 330 pounds.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm down to 200 now. So, yeah, about
Wow.
330 pounds. I think that's what it is.
Wow. And even going back to when you're growing up, I mean, how did the weight, did it impact your life too, such as relationships or any other areas of like things at school?
Yeah, I think I always lacked, because of it, I just lacked a lot of self confidence. I was really not kind of comfortable in that body. And, so then you get bullied or people call you names or whatever, but even without them calling you names, you're self-conscious, right? You can look in the mirror and you can see that you're a bit different to a lot of people. And I think that's the other reason alcohol was so attractive to me, was that you could take that drink and all of a sudden you had some confidence. You had a feeling that, not that you were untouchable or unbreakable or anything like that, but I had this feeling of, okay, actually, I'm not so worried about my weight because I've had this drink and it's given me a bit of a superpower, and I feel like I can go and talk to people now. And that was really attractive to me. And I couldn't dream of going on a night out and not having a drink, because I would just feel so awkward, so self-conscious about, my size and the way I looked. And so that was another reason, I think, that alcohol played such a big part in my kind of daily life.
Yeah. Does the word feel like we belong? Does that relate to how you felt at all?
Yeah, well, it made me feel like I could belong.
Yeah.
It made me feel like I could belong. And, I looked up, or you kind of look up to a lot of friends who didn't have a weight problem or whatever, and I wanted to be part of that kind of cool gang, and alcohol seemed to unlock that. People who might not normally talk to me would talk to me, and so alcohol was a good entry point into that. And otherwise, I felt at school or at university, I felt a little bit embarrassed about who I was. I wasn't enough. Is probably a fair statement.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you mentioned there to university. So after high school, is that where you head?
Yeah. So up to Scotland, I went to university in Glasgow, and Glasgow is kind of known as a bit of a dark party city, and it really was. And I think if already my drinking wasn't in a great space already, this only accelerated it. You're away from home. There's a good reason to go out pretty much every night. I didn't have a lot of willpower, so I was regularly convinced to go out. And also, I don't know if it's the same in Canada, but with university, you don't have to attend the lectures, so you have to attend school, right? You kind of, if not, the teachers tell your parents and there's a meeting. But at university, if you didn't show up, it really didn't matter. And so I would regularly miss large chunks because I couldn't get out of bed because I was too hungover, and hence I didn't do brilliantly at university. I left early. I was supposed to do a 4-year course. I did a 3-year course. I certainly didn't fulfill my potential in education. Not that I was brilliant anyway, but so yeah, it wasn't a great place to go for me in terms of my drinking and my weight. That carried on the kind of pattern.
Yeah. I know you hear that story a lot on the podcast too. When people go off to college, it's kind of like, I always picture a bowling lane And, when you're younger, you play with the bumpers. And is that what they're called? The bumpers? Where the
I know
ball,
exactly what you mean. Yeah.
yeah, it can't go off the course, right?
Yeah.
But then when we leave for college, it's like now those are gone, right? There's nobody saying do this, do that, or like not at the end of like my high school that my parents were doing that, but they were still keeping an eye. I knew that there was that level of accountability. But in college, yeah, you're right. It's just if you're struggling already and then you're into that environment, it's like, oh, it can go one of two ways, right? Make things a
Yeah.
heck of a lot worse. Or maybe for some people, help them out. But I'm with you on this story to where things just kind of unraveled. How are you feeling throughout all of this too? Is like other things going on in your life. How are you feeling about your mental health? And, take us a little bit into
Yeah.
inside of that.
So I think, with the heavy weight and all of these things, you only realize it now when you reflect back. But that weight or heavy weight on my body had a lot of consequences. So, I had problems with my knees, my ankles, my knee would dislocate. I had problems with my ankles, twisting them. And so, you could never really. And I think the thing I've always enjoyed fitness. I love fitness. I loved sport. Like sport is just a massive passion of mine, and I loved playing sport. And what happened with all of this is that I'd regularly be injured. I'd regularly have because I was too big. I wasn't fit or healthy enough. And what alcohol does, and what kind of being really overweight does, is it stops you being able to be consistent in any way, shape, or form. So, you might be good for 2 days, and then you hurt your knee, or you go out on a big night out, and then all of a sudden you can't do any exercise for a week, and then you get back into some bad patterns. And mental health wise, probably I didn't suffer from it so much until later. As I've got older, I've suffered a lot more from anxiety, but I did suffer about what people thought of me. I was always questioning, do people just think I'm this fat loser? Is probably the best description. It's a bit brutal, but that's how I felt. And I think something I've learned in sobriety, and I'm just loving, is about the way you talk to yourself. And I was cruel to myself. I wasn't a nice person to myself. And that would probably come out sometimes in the way I treated other people as well. I was probably quite selfish. So yeah, I wouldn't say although my mental health, I've always want to be careful about how I position that. But certainly in terms of my self-talk was really degrading to myself.
Yeah, you were struggling in that area of things
Yeah.
that, probably even a lot earlier than college, I would have a guess too, right? With the
Yeah.
things you were going through. Did anybody mention anything, or is there any red flags from the outside, like in this part in your life?
Yeah, I think probably a few red flags. I went on a trip I think I must have been 22, 23. My dad had always wanted to go on a trip to Australia. It was like a big deal for him, and he asked me to come along, and we went along for sort of 3 weeks. And a couple of occasions in Australia, I didn't know anyone. It was supposed to be a holiday, but I went out, and on one occasion I got really smashed. I mean, properly smashed. And I came back to the hotel, and we were due to take a flight the next morning. I probably came into the hotel about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and I just couldn't get out of bed. I just physically couldn't. And I remember he actually went and took the flight. He was so annoyed. He just was like, I'm taking the flight to the next city. We were flying from Brisbane to Sydney. And he just took the flight. And I remember waking up that afternoon. I think someone was like knocking on the door to get me to check out or something. And he was so annoyed. He like left me. He's like, "You're booking your own flight." And I remember that. So that was a bit of a red flag. He was kind of saying, "You got to take it easy a bit." But I think my dad never wanted to be hard on me, because with what had happened with mum, he didn't want to like break that connection in any way. So he probably wasn't as tough on me as he wanted to be. But I think red flag wise, again, in the UK, binge drinking and heavy drinking is pretty accepted. And I think, it's kind of laughed at, or, it's a bit of a joke. So not too many red flags were
Yeah.
probably sent in my direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even interesting there too, where you say like in the UK for the binge drinking and real acceptable. It's almost like in my story anyway, it was encouraged. It was like celebrated. It was
Yeah.
like in those, when I was younger, it was just like, wow, can't believe all that. This like celebrated for just trying to be nice to myself here, but just acting like not how I should be,
Yeah.
just
Yeah. It was
doing
cool.
ridiculous. Yeah, it was
Right.
that thing that was cool. And for somebody like me growing up,
Yeah.
different things brought it on for me in my life, but I was looking for a place to fit in. And I can relate to your story so well that alcohol was like an easy ticket in. It was the easiest way to get into these different groups of people that I never would have maybe had the opportunity to otherwise. And then, yeah, be celebrated for a lot of the madness or, the talk of the school the next day after the party. And like for me, for someone who feels like the world didn't see me, that I existed for so long, well, in my mind, it made sense. Now we're getting noticed, even if it is at the sacrifice of our own self-respect or what we know is right. I was like, this is beautiful. People are noticing. But then that you can only do that. I could anyway only do that for a little bit, right? Because then there's consequences that come with sort of the silliness after time. But I kind of relate with you,
Yeah.
on that in a sense of trying to, find our way. I think there's a lot of pressure too. I don't know if you felt it too, but I felt a lot of pressure in high school of like I had to have my whole life figured out. Like, where are you going to school? What do you do? What do you want to do? And I was like, I have no idea what I want to do or if I'm even going to school. And it was just like that made me even maybe want to fit in even more. Going through like so you do 3 years. Do you start working after university then? Do you go back to the UK,
Yeah.
Scotland?
Yeah. So I moved to London, and I do what I suppose every sensible person who's got a problem with alcohol does. I get a job in hospitality.
Oh,
So yeah, working
yeah.
in hotels and restaurants. And those go hand in hand really. And I was good. I was good at my job because I was good at speaking to people. I was able to talk to people. I was able to make them feel relaxed and good about themselves. And so I kind of thrived early on in my career. And I really enjoyed it. It was the first thing I really felt at home. And so yeah, and but with working in restaurants and working in hotels, every night, whether a customer had bought the team a few drinks, we would go out sometimes with the guests. Sometimes, we looked after the Foo Fighters for a week at one of the hotels I was working at, and they took us to a concert, and then we went and had beers with them on the roof and at Earl's Court, and I had this access to this really cool like hotel group, and we just had all the famous people staying with us, and so yeah, and I kept drinking, and I didn't stop on that front, and then my career kind of evolved, and I started to take bigger roles and be in more management levels, and when you're in that scenario, it then becomes acceptable to drink at work because you're drinking with the customers, or you're testing with the wines, or you're having lunch with someone important like a client that could bring you some business. So it's acceptable to drink at lunchtime. And so then, and it's always free. When you're in hospitality, it's always free. So I didn't have to worry about the fact if I was broke, I could still get access. And then I took on a job which for the first time meant I had to travel a lot. So that kind of had consequences, that I was driving a lot and I started to get a bad back. I was big, I was driving, I had this bad back. So I started to take some codeine, Solpadeine it's called in the UK. And that had this same effect as alcohol, this nice numbing effect. But even better, I could take it in the morning. So,
Mm.
there was nothing stopping me, if you like. I could wake up in the morning, I could take some codeine, it would have that kind of relaxing effect on me. I could numb out. And by this stage, I'm highly anxious. I have ridiculously low self-esteem and low self-confidence. And I'm basically just medicating my way through the day.
Yeah.
Codeine, food over intake, alcohol. By the time I get to maybe mid-afternoon, evening, and if there has to be a day where I can't drink because I'm driving or something like that, well, I can just take codeine throughout the day. And yeah, I'm kind of then stuck in this cycle that's going nowhere. And at this age, I started to get some real red flags from people around me.
What age is this?
So kind of 35 now, and I'm starting to get, comments from people about, my drinking. I'm starting to get comments from people about some of the painkiller stuff is coming to the fore when I've asked someone, oh, can you run out and buy me some? Or my wife finds it in my bags at work. When I come home from work, she finds it like, are you still taking this stuff? I thought you said you'd stop taking this stuff.
How long were you taking it for? Like how many years? Or
yeah, codeine I was probably taking for 3.5, 4 years.
Yeah. Curious too, how do you stumble across the codeine as sort of a thing to check into?
Yeah, so I was looking for painkillers, and paracetamol and ibuprofen is what we normally use in the UK. And then I think my dad was using it for like a bad back or something like this. And I said to him, oh, what's this? And he said, oh, it's a really strong painkiller, but be careful. Don't take too much. It's addictive. And that, there you go. Wise words, Dad.
Do they tell you like when you buy it?
Yeah. And when you buy it, it says on it, highly addictive. And every time you buy it at the counter, they tell you so. But you just go to a different pharmacy, and I'm traveling. So, there's hundreds of pharmacies around the UK. So you're never buying it from the same place. And if you do, it's a week apart. So.
Oh, the restriction is you have to wait a week to get it from the same place.
No, there's no restrictions, but if they saw you at the same place over and over, they have a right to ask you some questions, if that makes sense. But it's
okay.
But it's pretty easy to get hold of.
Yeah.
You can order it online. It's not difficult to get hold of. So
yeah. But you found that was sort of helping you for the emotional pain that maybe you were going through, like, or were you? Yeah.
I think, as I mentioned, I started to get more anxious, and particularly work-wise with my weight. And if I was going into a boardroom with, what I felt were really serious people, and like, I don't belong here. I don't have enough to contribute here in this room. I'm fat, pathetic Simon. Like, what am I doing here? And if I could have some of that codeine before I walked into that meeting, I would numb those anxious feelings. It would literally wipe them away. And then for that meeting, I could feel like, okay, I'm numbed out here. So I might not be completely dialed in to the meeting, but I can handle the pressure of sitting here for 2 hours, even though I hate it. And so that's what that did for me. But I kind of, I'm getting to the age of 38, 39. I've got 2 young children. At the time, they were 8 and 4. And, I was letting them down. Brad, I was really letting them down. And, from everything at bedtimes, finding bedtimes annoying because it means I can't have a drink, from, Saturday and Sunday being hungover that I can't play with them. I was letting people down in my life. I was letting my wife down. I was, sometimes I'd call her if I was at work and I'd planned to come home, but then I didn't kind of come home till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I might not text her my whereabouts, or I would, and I'd lie, or whatever it might be. But I really my financial situation was poor. I just wasn't being a great human. I wasn't being a good dad. And I had this one particular day where it was the Christmas party the night before. I'd got pretty hammered. I woke up, I felt terrible. And I'd ask a colleague to go and get me some codeine from the pharmacy, and he kind of came back and he gave it to me, and his name's Gary. And he said to me, "Look, Simon, it's none of my business, but you're going to kill yourself if you carry on the way you're going." And I remember that just like bang hit me. And I was driving home, and it just really hit me that I've got to sort out my life here. I've just got to get a grip, or I might as well kind of give up because I'm just not being useful to anyone.
Yeah. So that was something kind of from the outside. And you shared too in the last sort of share you had there too, which I found interesting, is you're connecting the dots on, yeah, I think you used the word like letting people down, right? Your wife and your kids, and maybe in your job too. How were you, like, did you feel at that time you were also letting yourself down of like maybe goals you had in life and maybe your health and in areas, or was it more focused on like how it was impacting other people?
Yeah, no, I kind of felt like, I suppose, when you're young, you're excited about your future and, what you might do. And, I thought, I'm going to be this big star in hospitality and I'm going to rise to the top of the ranks. And, I'd made a great start, but I'd become very stagnant and people weren't promoting me because frankly, I wouldn't promote myself either. I had a reputation of drinking and all of that sort of thing. So why would you trust me with a more important job? So yes, I felt like I was letting myself down as well, but because I was so dialed into drinking, sobriety, it was less I'm letting myself down, and often I would blame other people. So I didn't get that job because that person doesn't like me, not because, Simon, you're not performing or you're not good enough. I think when we're in addiction, we're not as self-aware as we could be, and often we're more likely to blame, or we're more likely to have anger towards people because of our own failings, if that makes sense. And blaming other people is so much easier than having to look at yourself. Mm-hmm. Like blaming other people is so easy in comparison. So I'd probably say, yes, I was disappointed with where I was, but it was probably, in my mind, it was probably other people's fault.
Yeah. Interesting too. I can relate with that a ton too. I had this mentor early on in my journey who said, when you point your finger at somebody, you have three pointing back at you. It's not everybody else's fault for where you are in your life. I mean, for some things, there's elements of that, but this kind of goes back to that thing. We can't control the world around us. We can only control how we respond to it. Like I can't control the weather and, everything else, right, that's going on, but how we respond to it makes all the difference. But yeah, I do hear that a lot. I think we get stuck in that cycle too of roughing ourselves up a little bit and, thinking it's all this other stuff that ended us up here, and, really struggle with that willingness to start making different choices and taking different actions. So your friend here goes and gets you this codeine. Other people around you, it sounds like it anyway at this point, right? With your wife finding stuff in the bag, and other people are picking up on it, that maybe there's a little bit more going on here than just the bad back maybe at this point. And that's kind of sets in for you probably the honest truth of where, things were headed for you, right? Like just hearing a little bit of your story here, and this kind of seed here, does it start to grow a little bit?
Yeah. So it really kind of triggers this thought process in my head. And again, I think my brother, me and my brother, we're very close now, but we probably drifted apart a bit, during this time. And I think he was concerned maybe my dad had flagged something to him. I don't know. And he WhatsApped me one day out of the blue, maybe even a week before this, with a couple of books. He said, "You've got to listen to these books. They're brilliant. I've just listened to them." And one of them was This Naked Mind by Annie Grace. And the other one was the Rich Roll book. I can't remember the name of it. Do you know who I mean by Rich Roll?
Yeah.
It was his book. And so I'm kind of driving home that night, and I remembered my brother had sent me these books, and I thought, right, I'm going to listen to one of these books. And over the course of the next few weeks, I listened to both of those books. And the Annie Grace one was like, shit, how did I not listen to this like years ago? Because is this what alcohol's been doing to me? And it was this kind of realization point. And the same with the Rich Roll book. And I just kind of said, look, I've just got to start exercising. I've just got to start trying to take better care of myself, and started with a 5-minute walk and then a 10-minute walk. And there was a boxing gym just around the corner from where I worked, like nothing glamorous, like £5 to get in, cheap boxing gym,
Yeah.
no frills. And the guy there, the coach there, Wayne, was like hard as nails, no emotion, just get on with it. And I just started to love it. At this stage, I'm massive. I can't run. I can barely box for about a minute without feeling like I want to vomit or keel over. But I just started to feel better about myself. And I'd said to myself, I'd made a real effort. I'd opened up to my wife. I'd been really honest with her. I told her where I was. Her reaction was amazing. She kind of laughed at me at first and said, do you think I'm stupid? Like, because I was telling her, like, I'm addicted to this. I do this. And she said, do you think I'm stupid? Like, I know.
Wow.
And, she kind of put her arms around me, and she was so supportive. And then I opened up to my dad, and, he was really supportive. And so often I think when we're kind of in that cycle, we're so ashamed and embarrassed about where we are and who we're letting down. And we almost don't want to admit it to anyone, but actually talking to them was like such a relief for me.
Yeah, just interesting thought on there, because you hear it all the time, right? People want to talk to their partners or their family or whoever, and then there's other people who are just terrified of it. And I think that oftentimes we work up this story of how it's going to go between our ears, and then when we share with people, it's like it's tough to do, but when we share it, it's like they've got our back. And it's like they're not viewing us the way that maybe we thought they were or they thought they would. And it's like in those moments, the shame has the opportunity to die a little bit about how we feel about ourselves. I feel it as a really empowering thing to go out there and share with people and get that support, and just, stop holding it all in. Interestingly enough, though, people already know.
Yeah.
They already know.
Yeah. Yeah. And she was super supportive. And I said, look, I'm going to make a massive effort to not drink from kind of Sunday to Thursday. And she really helped me with that. And, I kept myself busy, and in the evenings, I'm like washing the dishes, I'm walking around everywhere. I'm just doing anything to keep my mind off it. And I'm finding it really hard, like super, super difficult. I'm listening to podcasts, I'm listening to books. I'm just doing anything I can, but I'm still allowing myself to drink at this stage on a Friday and a Saturday. The codeine, kind of, my wife was like, look, that is a non-negotiable. You have got to finish that straight away. You've got to, and that was difficult. I didn't, I slipped back on it on a couple of occasions, but I'm starting to feel better about myself. I'm even if I'm failing every so often, I'm starting to see the difference. I'm starting to, what I call stack days. I'm starting to stack them one after the other. And with that comes some confidence. The weight starts to come off. I'm feeling more confident. My job's going better. I feel healthier. I'm sleeping better. And all of these things start to mount up. My skin is better. And all of a sudden there's like this piece of evidence that's like, wow, okay. So this is what not drinking does for you. And I'm hearing it more in podcasts. I'm hearing it more. And literally from that point on, it has been revolutionary. My life has just completely flipped. I've lost, 120 pounds. My fitness has gone from not being able to get up the stairs without being out of breath to go on to complete 2 Ironmans. I wake up every day and run or cycle or swim. I've swam across the sea from one island to another in the UK. I've cycled crazy distances, and I then start to develop a confidence to talk to people, to talk to people about it. And then all of a sudden, my wife says to me, like, you should try and go on stage and talk about it. And so I reach out to an old boss and said, look, would you mind if I came and do this? I've put together this keynote. And she said, no problem. Come along and do it. And you get this confidence back about reaching out to people or asking a question or, can I do this? And I get on stage and my whole body's shaking and I'm nervous and I've got it all written down on paper and I'm like referring to the paper and not looking at anyone. And it was awful. But I was like, okay, I've got to do this again. I've got to get better at it. So I ask someone else, can I come and do it? And this time I feel better about it and I do better. And then I post about it on LinkedIn and another colleague comes to me and says, oh, do you do this? We'd love to hear from you and whatever. And then I go and do it for Amazon at their head office and they pay me like £5,000 to go and stand and speak in front of a room of 500 people. And then another 10 people reach out and say, can you do it? And this journey is just like crazy. I'm just like, all these opportunities are coming and I start my own business and like to keep myself accountable, helping other people as well, just wanting to share and talk about it has just been so powerful. And you just realize when you do that, how many people are struggling, like how difficult it is. And when I was back then and I thought I was this one person who was struggling, that actually how mistaken I was, that actually it's one of the most common problems out there. And everybody wants to talk about it and everybody wants a bit of help. And it's just been a really powerful journey for me.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that too. And when you started to get curious about things or moving in this direction, was it 2019? Was it around there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you see it, right? Because I saw your Instagram profile and saw the pictures you posted, and then saw you here right now, and I mean, you notice physically, right? Weight loss, like that you've lost a lot of weight. You can tell. What's changed on the inside that we can't necessarily see from a picture?
Yeah, I think so much has changed. And I don't know if you experience this, Brad, or if this is just a me thing, but probably the number one thing is that it doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen every day. But sometimes I just get this feeling of peace. I just get this beautiful feeling of peace that I might be sitting and having a cup of coffee with my dog lying on my lap at 5:30 in the morning. And I just think, oh my God, last night I didn't drink and I didn't fuck something up. I didn't say something I shouldn't. I didn't do something I'm embarrassed about. And I get this quite a lot, this sense of peace, this feeling in my stomach that I'm a good person, and I was probably a good person back then, but I did a lot of things wrong. And it's just it's that sense. And with that comes, more self-confidence, and I feel more confident than I ever have in my entire life. And I feel better about myself. And that's probably the big changes for me.
Yeah. No, I love that. That piece I can relate with you, but I have a follow-up kind of question to it. When you get that warm, fuzzy feeling of at peace, do you feel emotional, or do you ever get emotional in those moments?
Yeah, I feel emotional. I look back at that boy that was 15 that was dealing with something that was really, really difficult. And I never gave him the chance to properly feel what he was feeling. I didn't let those emotions come out. I drank them out instead. So I feel for that guy. I also think about, a lot of the missed probably opportunities in my children's early childhood to be a better dad. Sometimes I feel a bit of regret towards that. But I also feel incredibly present sometimes. Like I feel present in my body, and so it's a mixture. But then overall, I think the feeling is also of pride that it's a really tough journey, and a lot of people don't make it. A lot of people don't do it. A lot of people will go till they're 75, 80 years old. Now, they won't go through that sobriety journey, and that's fine. That's good. But I know if I hadn't done that, I would have missed out on a lot. I know I would
Yeah.
have missed out on even more. And so it's a feeling of pride as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, for me, it's just a short stroll in the, on a trail. And I'm just thinking it kind of happens fast in my mind. I just go back to like how things used to be. And yeah, it's just like, sometimes I'm finding myself holding back tears of like
Yeah.
this. There's no way. There's absolutely no way this can be my life.
Yeah.
Into where things are at for me today, and the changes that I've made, but also still the challenges that are ahead and the ones that I still face, even on a sober journey, but that I'm willing to show up, and that I'm aware of where I can, move and make adjustments and make improvements and things that, I'm not perfect at everything just because I got sober type deal. I'm not that
Yes.
magical.
No, and it isn't that, is it? It's not that you're perfect. It's that you've got a willingness to try, a willingness to try and do a bit more, and a willingness to get over those hurdles.
Yeah, 110%. And I think it's incredible that you touched back onto that, really important time in your life at 15. I saw this other quote this week, and it kind of mentioned like we grow up or we evolve into what we needed when we were younger, or the person that we needed when we were younger. And like I think part of it kind of brought it up for me when you shared that about now you're feeling emotions, you're going through this, you've overcome so much and are going to continue to do so. And it's like when I look back at my story of the person who was so worried about fitting in and so worried about belonging and had such low self-esteem, and like that stuff just doesn't live in my life anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, I just wish that I would have obviously had that stuff back then, but I think not having that stuff also sent me on a journey to try to find out who I really was. And maybe, some might argue I took the long way around, but I ended up here. And for that, I just can't trade anything for that.
Yeah.
It's so interesting in your story too, right? Of all the progress and everything you made. And I really love how you started out there, that when you first started on this, this exploration of, is there more, to life than the way I'm living, is like, I started with the 5-minute walk. I started to go and ask for help at the boxing place. I started with these small things that over time make a huge difference. And I think sometimes people, when they want to, put down the drugs, put down the alcohol, whatever it is, I think that it can become so overwhelming that I've got to change everything in my life overnight. And I think the truth is the things that we, those small actions that we take every day, like you said, to stack in days, right? It's about stacking all of those things together. And I think that you're an incredible example of the outcome. If we zoom out a little bit, in the moment from day to day, it might not feel like I'm making the biggest progress in my life. But when I zoom out for maybe 3 months or 6 months, and, now Ironmans, 2 Ironmans. Did Rich Roll's book inspire you in this direction at all?
Yeah, I would definitely say it did. And the other thing was my brother. So my brother is fit, healthy. He's always, kept in good shape. And he'd said to me, when I was at my prime, when I was at my biggest weight, he said to me, I'm thinking of doing one of these Ironman things. And I asked him, I said, what's that? What's an Ironman? He said, oh, you've got to swim this, you've got to cycle this, and then you finish running a marathon. And I was just like, kind of, that isn't even humanly possible. And he's never done it. He's going to listen to this and say, you bring this up all the time. And so there was this kind of competitive spirit in me that I was like, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it before him. And I think, the fact that the distances were in my mind unfathomable is another thing about sobriety. And another thing about is you do not know what your potential is. And you haven't hit yours, Brad, and I haven't hit mine. we're so good at putting limits on ourselves. We're so good at, talking ourselves down, but actually none of us know what our potential is. And that Ironman journey was kind of like, oh my word, I can go from a 5-minute walk to doing 15 hours of nonstop exercise in the heat, starving hungry, and I can raise, thousands of pounds for charity while doing it. And I can do that. My children were watching me. I can set the most amazing example for them. I can cry halfway around the marathon and still get it done. Like it's and the other thing I just wanted to say, you said about the 5 minutes and the kind of layering in is that, the failed attempt. I didn't probably allude to it. Like, I failed on a lot of occasions, and looking back, why I failed is always because I felt like I would wake up in the morning, 4 a.m. I was telling myself, how did you let that happen again? You drank like an idiot again. You did this again. And then I'd say, I'm stopping. I'm never having another drink. That is it. And I think what was different about this time was that I layered things in much more. I didn't go like cold turkey all out in one go. And I kind of layered in the habits a lot slower, whether it was exercise, reducing alcohol, getting my diet better. And I just found that more sustainable. And eventually I kind of realized on that journey, I realized that alcohol was, so I was still drinking on the Friday and still drinking on the Saturday. And then I woke up and I realized, wow, I feel great Monday to Thursday, but I feel like shit on a Saturday and Sunday morning. Let's put 2 and 2 together here. It's the drink. And so slowly then I was able to put 2 and 2 together and drop the other nights. So yeah, to anyone who thinks that, there's so many different ways of approaching this, and you've got to find what works for you.
Yeah. And that's the most important thing. And I think too, like, you're building up all these other areas of your life. You're feeling better about yourself. You're gaining that confidence in so many different things, right? Physically active. And, I think if you do all of that, if you're working on all that stuff and you really know the truth about alcohol, like, the two can't like live on forever and us not to be consumed by it. You know what I mean? It's like, at that point, after you read This Naked Mind, it's kind of like, okay, you have the information and let's start going to work on it, right? And those two things kind of come back around, and you're at this crossroads, right? If I want to get here, I'm going to have to let the drink go.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us do kind of, end there. I mean, I'll be honest, for the longest time, I wanted to be able for this thing to work out. I wanted to be able to drink the way it once was. Like, I wanted to be able to just let loose, escape the world for a little bit, not have a problem with it, not waking up. But it just, like, I tried all of that stuff. I tried to, do it here. I tried to do it there. I tried this. I tried the clear stuff, the dark stuff, the beer, the light beer. I mean, you name it. I kind of, my journey, I kind of went through the cycle of like, let's give this our best effort to keep this around. And I always ended up back at the same place. I could keep it together for a little bit and things weren't bad. Maybe 1 out of 10 drinking sessions were rough. Maybe 1 out of 20 were rough. But when it was rough, I was just like, if people would give me feedback and stuff, and I don't even know who that person is. I don't know what
he said or what he,
yeah. Like, I don't operate like that on a regular basis, and the stuff I was doing, and you become a lot riskier. I did anyway. I became very impulsive and a lot riskier in my decisions, to where sometimes it was like, dude, like, well, you're pretty close to like not being around anymore. And I wasn't even thinking of it. So I love that, though. The approach that works for the individual is so important in starting to work on those small things. How are you feeling, in today's world? I mean, 2025, looking back at it too, I mean, is there anything that surprises you about, this journey that you've been on, and how you've been able to make, in so many ways, a huge, huge turnaround?
I think probably the thing that surprises me the most, and I kind of alluded to it before. So, it's a sensitive topic, talking about alcohol, talking about weight. it's a really sensitive topic. And so when you go up on stage and, there might be 400, 500 people there and you start speaking, I often think, oh, this is really sensitive, but hey ho, let's go. And I think what always surprises me, whether it's straight after or whether it's, by message later on, and I always put my details up on the last slide, if anyone's struggling, if anyone needs, I'm always so surprised how many people kind of stick their hand up or come and talk to me afterwards or send me a message and say, I couldn't say anything in the room, but I'm really struggling. And it might not be alcohol they're struggling with. It might be drugs. It might be, family problems. It can be anything. But I think what I've been surprised by in this whole journey is just how many people have problems when I just assumed that most of the population had their kind of stuff together. And so I think that always surprises me, and that's why, things like your podcast, I think you've done nearly 190 episodes now. And if you think about how many people are listening to that on each time, and, they might not relate to everything, but they'll relate to certain bits from certain people. And that stuff's so powerful. And I think, I've listened to lots of books and lots of things, that stuff has helped me so much. It's so powerful. And I hope you don't forget that when you're putting these together, because I think that's what surprised me the most is just how many people, need some support and need some help or want some help and want to talk.
Yeah, there's so many people with so many backgrounds too, so many different stories about what's gotten them to where they're at. And then, I mean, it's kind of a bummer, but that's the reality, is that people are struggling to feel safe in their environments, especially to talk about alcohol, right? Because then it's like, were you an alcoholic or you have a problem or all this other stuff that's just is a lot for somebody who's newly exploring their relationship with alcohol and in other areas in their life too, right? Nobody wants to be judged by others and people who don't understand or people who lack empathy. And it's just, that's the tough thing. I think that's one of the things that really motivates me to keep this show going.
Yeah.
Is that we can just normalize these conversations and just say, here's Simon, here's Brad, good people making better choices in our life today. And there was a couple things in our way and here we are. And, it's a rocky journey at times, but there's a ton of upside, an unlimited amount of upside to things this way. If somebody's tuning into the episode here, and they're struggling to get or stay sober, is there something you could draw from your own personal experience to share with them?
Yeah. So that if they're struggling, I'm going to give a really practical tip here.
Okay.
So there was this one, I guess you call it a hack or a practical tip, and I have to share it because it helped me so much. Is, how you have Outlook or like a calendar or Google Calendar or whatever you have to have your day, and you have your work meetings in and all of those things. And what I started doing was every morning I'd make a meeting and I'd call that meeting sober day or 1 hour's exercise or no solpadeine, no codeine. And then I'd come back to it the next day and I'd turn it green. So on my calendar, it would be green. So I didn't drink last night. I did exercise and I didn't have codeine. I'd turn them all green. And I kept doing that. And it was kind of that stacking thing. And that felt so good to go back every day and just tick it green. I don't know why, just turning the box green. And then you can then kind of look back at it over 2 weeks and you go, wow, I've done 14 days in a row here, or I've done 20 days in a row here. And I know there's apps and things for that, but I found the calendar thing really easy for me because it was visually there in front of me often. So that's my practical tip. It's quite a cool little motivator. It's a way of kind of counting days, I guess.
Yeah. I think it even takes counting days to another level too, right? About tracking our progress and the other things. Because a big part of this journey too is it's not just going to be about not drinking.
Yeah.
It's not drinking, now what? And for a lot of us, we spent a lot of time drinking or planning for drinking or all that stuff. And now we get on this side of life of not drinking, and we need to find something that we're going to do to
Yeah.
find the time. I mean, we can only do so many dishes, you know? I'm just thinking back. I mean, that was probably great, right? You're just helping out with all the housework and everything in the beginning. I mean, you hear so many people, right? It's trying to stay busy, right? Organizing the closets and got the garage figured out. And I'm thinking like, oh, the partners out there, they're just loving this. Anything that we missed before we wrap up that you want to share?
No, I think it's really enjoyable talking about it. It's a point of self-reflection for me and as well. So, thank you for taking the time to have me on the show. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, 110%. Well, enjoy your skiing and snowboarding later this week. And thank you for jumping on here and sharing your story with all of us.
Great. Thanks, Brad.
Well, there it is. Another incredible story here on the podcast. Just going through the editing and thinking a little bit more about everything that Simon shared there. It's just so incredible about how much of a difference just getting started makes on our journeys of sobriety or anything else we're trying to achieve in life. It's sometimes the biggest hurdle to overcome are those first steps in the direction that we want to be going. But that's where the entire journey starts. And even like Simon's journey, a lot of us will fall down and get back up and fall down and get back up and just keep doing what's working. Look back at those situations and ask yourselves the hard questions about what wasn't working. Is there some other areas that I could give a little bit more attention to? But as always, guys, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the podcast. I'll drop Simon's contact information down in the show notes below, and I hope to see you on the next one.